Greetings, and welcome to Quantum Healing with Candace. I'm your host, Candace Craw-Goldman. This program was created to assist humans in this rapidly changing world while it is expanding into new realms and new ways of thinking and being. It is based on the foundation of the late, great Dolores Cannon's work and our continued contact with her from beyond the veil. So thank you, Dolores, for continuing to encourage us to explore new directions. Also, thanks to Greg Prescott and Michelle Walling at N5D.com for making this show possible. And I'd like to take a moment now to thank all of the wonderful supporters of this show and this work, all of my N5D friends, my new Earth Journey friends, my Facebook and Twitter friends, and my QHHT Practitioner and client friends. With humanity's new understanding and acceptance of the quantum world and the role that consciousness plays in shaping both our individual and our collective reality, we've got plenty of things to talk about. So I'm a full-time practitioner of Dolores Cannon's hypnosis method, and I had the honor and great privilege of working with and alongside of her for several years. You can find out more about my practice of quantum healing and my consulting and coaching services at newearthjourney.com. I'd like to mention that I'm offering my own new quantum healing meditation process that's available remotely. Call or email me about how we can create your very own personalized and unique to you meditation recording. And lastly, before we get started tonight, for those of you who are looking for a practitioner of Dolores' method of quantum healing, or for those who've trained with Dolores in the past, you may find wonderful practitioners and resources for practitioners of all kinds at DoloresCannonQHHT.com. That's DoloresCannonQHHT.com. This show supports those who are dedicated practitioners of Dolores Cannon's method. So, tonight's show, Easter 2016. You know, it's astonishing how often the energy or the being of the Christ participates in a quantum healing session. Some sessions refer to the energy or communication in a more esoteric way, you know, the Christ consciousness. But some sessions are very down to earth and involve stories about human interaction with the physical man of Jesus Christ. And often he is referred to as Yeshua in this time period. So sometimes clients find themselves experiencing a life during the time of Christ and describe scenes with him or tell stories about the people, you know, what they were saying about him, tales about his teaching or the miracles performed. And many stories focus on the crucifixion or other eyewitness accounts, you know, or secondhand stories. So no matter what your religion or belief in the actual event or the life of Christ, there's no question that this man's life and his death is burned into the very DNA of human memory, all human memory, it seems. And the really fascinating thing about regression sessions involving Jesus is that a great number of them are experienced by non-Christians or former Christians who had denounced their former religion or left the church. So tonight's show features some of these stories, some of these session stories that various practitioners have had that revolve around the life of Christ or the Christ consciousness. So tonight I'm going to be playing 3 audio recordings. One is from an actual session, a real life session that I personally facilitated in 2011, and my recording isn't hot about it. It isn't really great, I guess is what I want to say as far as clarity, but it's all right. I think it'll be fine. And then I'm going to read a brief summary from another practitioner, and then I'll be playing 2 audio recordings by 2 other practitioners who will be describing a couple of their sessions. But I'm going to start out by talking about our mentor and our teacher, Dolores Cannon, first. Dolores herself had probably the most detailed and astonishing sessions with Jesus, and she wrote 2 books about these sessions. The first one, Jesus and the Essenes, was one of her very first published books. It was written during the early years of her writing career, the same time as she was exploring time and space with Nostradamus. So she was kind of juggling these two things at the same time, having two different adventures right at the same time. So Jesus and the Essenes was a book published in 1992. And this book is the story of the nature and purpose of the Essene community in Qumran, where they were teaching, and the birth and upbringing of not only Jesus, but John the Baptist. So Dolores spent 3 months working with a client who regressed to become a very specific person in this time, a man, a teacher, an Essene named Sudi. And Sudi described in this book and to Dolores through many, many sessions how people reacted to Yeshua, how he traveled with his uncle, the wealthy Joseph of Arimathea, who was a trader of tin and metals. And he described what life was like there in the community, just daily life and the things that are around them, the meals that they ate, the way they spend their days. It's really, really fascinating. But of course, it's fascinating in the main way because he actually had contact with Jesus as a young man. So Dolores is able to ask all kinds of questions of Sudi. Absolutely somebody who was there and witnessed and, spent a lot of actual time with the human being we now know as Jesus Christ. So Sudi talks about all kinds of things. He talks about all of the miraculous things that happened during that time. And one of the things that he actually talks about is miracles. So he talks about how they physically are manifested. And Dolores is fascinated by this, as you might imagine. And he explains that some of these miracles that are associated with Jesus aren't actually miraculous at all, meaning really, one just needs to be a very clear channel, a very clear human being, which is what Jesus was. He was in tune with his own self and in touch with the spiritual planes, and he was working with actual laws of nature and the universe. So Jesus was powerful, and he was clear, and he understood these laws, but what he said time and again, and what Sudi emphasizes in this book, is that this innate power, this miraculous power that we attribute to Jesus, this innate power is within every human. Deeply hidden or denied, or simply not come to life yet, but it is there. And for the main reason, it's just that most humans are not clear channels. They have a lot of baggage, as most humans do, don't we all? And we're often exhibiting lower vibrating energy. And these are the things that prevent us from performing miraculous things. But they're really laws of nature. So all of these things, levitating objects, changing lead to gold, breathing life back into a body that has already passed, changing water into wine, balancing the energies of those with sickness, healing the deaf, the lame, the blind, are innate abilities for all humans. Admittedly, not very many humans just yet, but Jesus was one who knew this to be truth and tried to teach us this, even back then. And then we were hard to teach, and we're still hard to teach. So Jesus was capable of accessing these abilities. So, one of the things that Dolores asked in her sessions in this book, again, we're talking about the book Jesus and the Essenes. Dolores asked about the fish and the loaves of bread, if Suni had ever heard of that story. And he said he had, but he stated that, it was the belief that was the most important thing. So he actually said something very interesting in the book, and Dolores picked up on it for sure. He said he didn't know if there were actual fish created, or if the belief that that was there was so great by the people who were with Jesus that they felt sated and fed, even if there weren't any physical fish. Now, isn't that interesting? Another way of looking at it. So Dolores also asked him about the story of Jesus' birth, and soon he knew about the star, in the sky, and he claimed that he was born in a cave. And the interesting thing about that is caves were used in the area to house and feed animals at the time, so it very well could have been a stable as well, a stable and a cave where he was born in a manger. But Sudi, and I think I said Sunni a couple of times there, so pardon me for that, but Sudi said that Jesus was born a regular man, meaning human, from a regular woman named Mary, who was just a woman, not a virgin, and a man, his father Joseph. And interestingly, it is spoken in the book that Sudi and Yeshua both knew what his purpose and path in life was and what was in his future, and that he would, in fact, eventually be killed. Both also knew that Judas would betray him long before these things took place, and they knew other things. Really very, very interesting book. One could read it multiple times and learn so very much. So the purpose of the crucifixion and the resurrection. The summary by Dolores in this book is astonishing. She acknowledges how many have tackled this subject over all the long years since these events actually happened. But Dolores squarely faces the dogma and brainwashing of the church early on and acknowledges her own brainwashing. This will be difficult, she says, when she talks about receiving this information and putting it into place. Dolores was so humble. In the book, she says she's not a philosopher, and she's always called herself a reporter. But she does talk about what she thinks she learned, what she thinks the lessons about the crucifixion and resurrection were, what she learned during this work, what she thinks Jesus' message to humanity was about those things. So again, in the book, Jesus and the Essenes, the chapter entitled The Purpose of the Crucifixion and Resurrection is a masterful and thoughtful and neutral and as unbiased a report as I think anyone could ever write about this subject, considering everything, and well worth a read by nearly everyone who's alive on this planet at this time. And I'm going to read only 2 paragraphs. So these are 2 paragraphs from page 278. I believe the purpose of the crucifixion was to show by vivid contrast what humanity had become, the depths to which it had sunk. I believe God was offering people a choice. Stay on your present course and become like these vile and debased creatures with no consciences, who think only of their worldly, mundane existences, or try to pattern your lives after his beautiful example, and you can rise above the chaos of the world and attain perfection. In the next paragraph, I believe the purpose of the resurrection has also been lost and muddled by people's thinking. God meant to show that the physical world is not all, that man was more. An eternal soul, a spirit that could not be snuffed out. That the spirit had continuance and could exist after the body ceased to function. To enter again into the body would not have proved the point the masters were trying to make. It would only show it was possible to continue in the physical. Thus, the earthly body of Jesus had to completely disappear. And truly, I can't stress enough how amazing this book is, and the reading of this book, the experience of reading this book, quite amazing. I find myself reading it at Christmas time. So I'm going to leave that book aside right now. I do want to mention that Dolores wrote a subsequent book on Jesus as well, and it is called They Walked with Jesus. This particular book was written or copyrighted in 1994 anyway, and it's about the regressions of two women, their separate encounters with Jesus in his lifetime. And another book of Dolores, well worth the time to read. So the first recording I want to share with you is a session that I facilitated, where my client finds herself witnessing events just before the crucifixion. This session was done in 2011, back when Dolores' method was called Dolores' method of past life regression, Dolores Cannon's method of past life regression. So I'm not going to go into any personal detail about the client, other than to note that I had 2 sessions with this person, and before the first one ever even took place, she claimed to have really no Christian leanings at all and considered herself more of a Buddhist thinker. And as it was, Jesus made an appearance in both of her sessions, and both times in an extraordinarily powerful way that made a lasting impression on her and on me as well. So here is a few minutes of that recording.
There seemed to be some sort of ordinary things going on. I mean, people gathered. This is a cluster kind of buildings. Mm-hmm.
Do you believe that you're standing there in some sort of official capacity, part of your work perhaps? Why are you there?
The phrase that came to me was great matters of government are being decided.
And when that phrase came to you, are you feeling a sense of purpose and responsibility? How does that phrase make you feel?
Relevant. There's some kind of an image of a woman in front of me. Okay. That I saw before, but I'm trying to put it in perspective or figure it out.
As this woman is standing in front of you, you can...
She's kneeling. But she's not kneeling necessarily facing me, like she's not exactly a supplicant.
I see. Is she in the middle of the street, or
no,
where is she?
She's a few feet in front of me. It seems... I can't ever tell how much I'm making this up, but the word that comes to her name is Mary.
Excellent. You're doing fine.
She has some kind of a blue drape around over her head and shoulders.
There's a reason this woman has captured your attention. There's a reason you have your focus upon her. And the more that you describe what you see and feel, the clearer the information will come. Who it is you're seeing and why. And your emotions are confirmation of that. Just open.
She's come to plead.
I see.
Oh, this doesn't make any sense.
That's all right.
She has come to plead for Jesus' life.
Oh my goodness. So, is she pleading for, or towards you, or just in general where she is? Or do you feel like she's approaching you?
This is too much responsibility.
Is this how you're feeling or what you're saying? You're doing so well. There's a
It
reason
feels like
we're
I
here.
am this person and I'm observing this person.
It's perfect. It's exactly the way it should be.
I don't feel like she's necessarily addressing me. Personally. But it feels like I have a great deal of responsibility here.
And when you, as this Roman official, hear the name of Jesus, what does it bring to your mind?
Compassion. Helplessness.
What is it that you know of this person they call Jesus?
Almost nothing. Except his commitment.
Are you surprised that the woman named Mary is kneeling there? Speaking of Jesus, or have you seen this before?
I don't know, it feels like I'm observing the scene, and in some ways I feel removed from this. Like I'm not sure why she's asking me if it's like, it's almost oblique. She's not asking me specifically. But she is in prayer.
Do you feel you are hearing her speak her prayers, or somehow you can hear her thoughts as she's praying? Or
Well, it feels like I am Augustus.
okay,
And so now my left brain is messing with me.
you're doing fine. You could be.
But that's the name that came to me early on, and
This is fine. doing very well. We're just going to stay here and continue exploring. So as you're standing there, feeling the staff in your hand and observing Mary, let's take a moment and look around and see if anybody else is noticing what's happening right here in front of you. The others that are walking about.
I think I'm witnessing the crucifixion.
It's okay. If it's difficult, you can watch it just like a movie. Just like a movie. There's a reason you're there. Tell me what you see.
How could I be here and do nothing?
Are you still as Augustus? Are you still the Roman official as you're watching this? You're in the exact right place where you need to be. Just take a deep breath and know that you are here for a divine purpose. Your presence here is divinely inspired. You are in the right place for the right reason. There is, in spite of whatever horror is happening in front of you, there is a gift here for you to find. There is a reason for you to be here. And we have all the time in the world to discover what it is. Everything's going to be okay.
I don't understand how I can be witnessing this. And she's there and not part of the throngs.
The next session story is one entitled Punished for Saving Jesus. And this session was facilitated by practitioner Barbara Becker.
Hi, Candace. This is Barbara Becker, and I am sharing a session story from a QHHT session where the client met Jesus, in fact, saved his life. This was a session for a middle-aged woman who had a very violent automobile accident involving her truck. In that automobile collision, she received a fractured cervical vertebra at the C6 level, and a couple of her ribs were fractured also. She was placed on pain medication, and she was dealing with it for quite some time and was guided to come to a QHHT session to help release all of this. In her session, she was shown about 5 separate past lives, and then she was shown a life with Jesus. And here's how it goes. She found herself as a woman dressed as a man looking at people riding camels in the desert. She had long, silky black hair, dark skin, sandals, and a long garment with money bags hidden in the fabric, fashioned around her body at the waist with a rope. She carried a golden staff encrusted with jewels. She shared with me that she was on a secret mission in a disguise, and she felt nervous about something. She was to meet someone at a location near the marketplace that she was heading to. I moved her forward in time to when she meets that person. She walks up to a wooden door, looks both ways, and hurries in. The room has dirt floors and a wooden table. She took off her outer garments and looks at her body and sees that, yes, she is a small-framed woman. There were other people in the room, and she noticed that something was moved under the kitchen table. It was like a rug that was over a trap door to a staircase leading to an underground tunnel. She goes downstairs into what looks like a dungeon. She helps free a person from a cell in this dungeon by opening the lock with keys that she already has in her hands. She recognizes the person in the cell as a male prophet, and she describes him with brown hair, long brown beard, light brown eyes, and his garment is white and tied with a rope. So I asked her for his name, and she replied, Jesus. I asked her, what is it like being with Jesus? And she said it was nerve-wracking and good at the same time. I asked her who put Jesus in this dungeon, and she replied, the king's men. At this time, Jesus is 22 years old. He kisses her on the forehead and says, thank you, don't worry, I'll see you again. She gave the bag of money from her garment to Jesus, and he leaves by walking away down one of the many corridors in an underground tunnel system. She goes back up to the kitchen, and I asked her, well, how do you know you were to go there to free Jesus? She said that she received a note by carrier pigeon, and the note said, come at once. After the session, I looked up carrier pigeons, and they were used for sport as early as 3,000 years ago. So I would imagine they also used them for a form of communications, like we know now. At this point in the session, she began having excruciating physical pain in the neck area where she was injured. And I told her that she will not receive or feel that discomfort mentally or physically. And we left that scene and went to another important day. Now she sees the gallows set up. The woman who opened the door to the place above the dungeon area that day was already hanging from them. And now it was her turn. She sensed it would be the guillotine for her, for helping Jesus to escape. A sack was placed over her head. She knelt down, the blade dropped, her head rolled, and she went out of her body before I even had a chance to say she would not feel any physical sensations of discomfort. I followed the script. I helped her to not feel those physical sensations of discomfort in the neck. It persisted a little bit, and then I asked her to continue on and go into the light. And I asked for Archangel Michael's assistance, who she was familiar with, and I reminded her just to say to herself, I trust, I trust, I trust. This worked for her, and she went into the light with Archangel Michael. Now, when we got to the point where I was talking with the subconscious of the client, I asked, why did they show her that scene of saving Jesus? And they said that life was a lesson to trust God, that no matter what happens, she will be okay, that her soul will be okay, to learn to trust her intuition and to do what she felt was right. Now, in follow-up, she shared with me that the next day when she drove home, that she had just a little discomfort, and that was it. Other than that, she was feeling great. And that is my story from a session that I entitled Punished for Saving Jesus. Thank you.
This next session story is one where practitioner Andre Cordella had a client who experienced a life as both Jesus and Isis.
A client came to me for a quantum healing hypnosis technique session. She had 2 past lives, one as Jesus the Christ and one as Isis the Queen. As Jesus could have been an emotional being or an intellectual being, but he was one and not the other. As was Isis. She had the opposite strength as Jesus and the opposite weakness of Jesus. And my client came into this lifetime to encompass both of the weaker aspects of both what became masters, so that she could balance them and develop strength in both of those. When she was in the past life of Jesus, when Jesus was crucified with 3 other men, during the session I asked Jesus, "What did you learn from your life as Jesus?" Jesus answered, "Judgment, learning, judgment." People looked at my death as something bad and evil and from Satan's point of view. But it was just another move in the game of chess. Everyone was seeing it as something horrible. If you just look at it and you don't judge, it is not horrible. It's just part of the dance, and I think learning about fear. Fear is just an illusion, and if you laugh at it, it walks away, shaking its head, wishing you had hired better demons. If you look at it using judgment and fear as a tool to grow, that's what the purpose of that lifetime was. I knew my purpose, and I accepted it, and I did it. I didn't attach an emotion to it. I did my job. My job was to teach. Then the job was over. The lesson was huge. My death was a crucifixion. But I was also crucified with other people. It wasn't always about me. Those other souls suffered too, and were judged too, but everybody's focus was on me. Nothing more. And those poor souls. They were judged as criminals. They judged me as something else, and we all died the same way. That was wrong. No one wept for them except me. I wept for them. They were alone. I learned the illusion of judgment. My executioners said I committed a crime, and I didn't. They said the others committed a crime. Whose definition of crime is it? Perception is what said one crime was worse than another's. I had a connection to Source my whole life. I was connected to Him. I could see a cord from the top of my head going directly to Source. I was aware of it all the time. I just had constant divinity, constant divine connection. I had grace. I believed in my intuition. I believed in what I felt and knew. Because I was connected to Source, but I'm not sure I knew that then, though. I just believed when I talked. I believed it when I knew. And I believed in my truth. It got me killed, but I believed, and I did it anyway. I spoke my truth, and those who were meant to hear it did, and those who were meant not to hear it didn't. It didn't stop me, and I didn't judge who heard it and who didn't. That wasn't my job. As my physical garments and body dissolve, I'm turning into what my soul looks like. It's hard to make out the features, but I look similar, but I'm not in that garment anymore. I think I ascended. Something about my eyes. They're sparkly blue, more sparkly than before. I feel like I went into that lifetime really, really wise. Or I came out of that lifetime and once I ascended, I was really, really wise. I feel like I accomplished a really difficult task. I never showed it was difficult. I had doubt at times. I was human. I felt fear, and I felt sometimes like maybe I shouldn't be doing this. But I never gave in to that, and I never allowed anyone else to hear me say that. That wasn't going to serve anything. So I overcame those demons in my head. So every time I thought I was wrong, I knew I wasn't. It didn't matter. And I felt bad that the others couldn't see the truth. That's very painful because I could see that their heart chakras are very dark because they are not in faith. They were in fear. They are in fear, not love. Fear turns to hatred. I was born in that lifetime with a knowing. I don't know how, but I can see. It was as if God put a little scroll in my third eye that I really didn't know was there, but it was information that my soul could read and refer to. I was connected directly to Source.
And finally, this last story is a brief account that I'm going to read. And this session was facilitated by Alice Mixer. Alice's client was a woman who described herself as early Jewish, but they were different in some way. She referred to her community as pre-Essene. At some point in her life, she was given a chance to remain ageless by rejuvenating through the Atlantean baths. She chose an age, 46, and then regularly went back to the baths for treatment to remain 46 years old indefinitely. How about that? She found that she had lived for 400 years. This woman described herself as a friend of Jesus' grandmother, Anna, who was also a woman who was using this rejuvenation treatment. They called themselves rejuvenators. So the entire purpose for being a rejuvenator was to prepare for the birth and life of Jesus. And once he was born, this particular woman stopped the treatments of rejuvenation and then just began to age naturally. She was a teacher and helped people get ready for Christ's coming. She also supported Jesus through the crucifixion. And in her story, she reports that Jesus actually did not die, although the male disciples promoted this belief. She also said that the male disciples were not at all connected with the woman teachers because their understanding and the significance of Jesus' teaching and all of these events went much deeper than that. She also confirmed the long-held idea that Mary Magdalene was no prostitute, but the actual wife of Jesus. And this idea is growing and growing in our world. And Mary had grown up an Essene. Mary Magdalene, that is, but she was not one by birth. So after the crucifixion, everyone who was the supporter and follower of Jesus had to flee. And she shared that her group had the ability and skill to bilocate. She also reported that Mary Magdalene went to England first and then France, and that Jesus went to India. And that's really interesting, too, because I've had more than one session where my own clients went to a life where they witnessed Jesus in either India or Egypt. So it's very, very interesting. So to continue, on the last day of her life as this woman, she described Jesus coming to her and thanking her for her service to him and the way of love, and also for bilocating to comfort him when he was a child. Isn't that interesting? And when the client's higher self came in, it explained that it had showed all of this to her to confirm some deep memories that she'd had and to help prepare her for her role in what's happening in the world today. There are so many stories featuring Jesus Christ, Yeshua, or the Christ consciousness. My own Christmas show, Quantum Healing with Candace, Christmas 2015 show, I read 3 stories, 3 session stories from my own practice that you can find and refer to if you'd like. I'll put the link below in the archives. I've been telling clients for a long time that my favorite sessions are the Jesus ones. And we share all of these sessions and these stories here and in other places, not to compare or contrast minute evidentiary details or to try to prove anything at all. It's easy to see how some stories contradict each other in some of the details. But the main messages don't seem to contradict each other at all. That of judgment and forgiveness and human potential. So I want to thank all of those who helped me put together this show. Those dedicated practitioners who contributed to this show in particular. First, MJ Ollinger, who is a QHHT practitioner, researcher, and archivist. She's working on a fabulous project for our community, indexing Dolores Cannon's legacy and beyond. MJ is located in northern Colorado, and you can find her at mjollinger.com. That's mjollinger.com. Also, Barbara Becker, who read her story to us earlier in the show. You can find Barbara at barbarabeckerhealing.com. And then there's Andre Cordella, who read her story for us. Thank you so much, Andre. You can find Andre at innernowing.org. ANDREE at inner-knowing.org. And finally, Alice Mixer. Thanks, Alice, for letting me read your session summary. You can find Alice at alicemixer.com. I want to take this moment to mention that N5D is leaving the Blog Talk Radio platform at some time this month, but the radio shows will continue. This show, Quantum Healing with Candace, will continue. It's just not going to be broadcast on Blog Talk Radio. You can find all of my shows, this one or any other Quantum Healing with Candace shows, or my new Earth Journey BBS radio show archived, either on my own YouTube channel, and you can find that at newearthjourney.com, or at N5D's YouTube channel. So the shows are not ending, just the way we're distributing might be. So I hope you enjoyed this very special Jesus show this evening. I didn't quite get it done before Easter, but I needed to wait for some permissions, and a couple other things going on in my life kept me from having it done by Easter. But I thought it'd be okay to upload it anyway, a little after the fact. I hope you enjoyed it. And I want to thank everyone who tuned in to listen tonight and all of you out there who are listening to an archived version in the future. So again, I'd like to remind those of you interested in quantum healing or are looking for a practitioner of Dolores' method, or if you're already a practitioner, you can find a robust support community that's been going on since 2008 at DoloresCannonQHHT.com. That's DoloresCannonQHHT.com. You can find out more about me and my own practice of quantum healing at NewEarthJourney.com. So until next time, sleep well, be well, and many blessings to you all. Good night.